Welcome to ChunkSmash, my chunk-locked Ironman. After 400 hours, I finally finished my Lumbridge starter chunk. But with death chunks around every corner and a potential 500-hour grind for the defense cape, did I really break free, or simply find a new prison? Let's find out.
The swamp. Wow, I hadn't realized how much tension I had in my body until just now. I did not want to roll the defense cape, but this is great. This is great. Let's take a look at the chunk tasks. I've got 44 tasks in total here. Let me go through them and get back to you. Right, I have curated the chunk picker and I have the following tasks to do in this chunk. Firstly, skilling tasks. I need level 40 mining to wield an addy pickaxe. And I need level 20 smithing to make bronze darts. Allegedly. I'm not sure I can actually make these without the quest, but we'll see. Next, we have a lot of new best in slots. We can make full bronze armor as our melee best in slot from the tin and copper in the Lumbridge swamp mine. I can also make a bronze mace, which, weirdly, is a best in slot because it's the only weapon I have access to with a prayer bonus, +1 to prayer. I can now get access to Batwing, meaning I can also craft full Batwing armor at level 38 crafting, which I already have, and that is my new best in slot magic gear. This is the next tier up for my Spider Silk armor, and basically is the magical equivalent to Mithril armor. I can also get tan leather now as a drop, meaning I can make full leather armor as my best in slot for ranged. And, still on the subject of upgrades, I can now get my first neck slot upgrades on the account. The Holy Symbol, my best in slot prayer necklace, the Magic Amulet, my best in slot for magic, and the Defense Amulet, my best in slot for everything else. In RS3, the Defense Amulet gives you both damage and defense bonuses, which is cool. It's basically a budget amulet of power. Next up, I have a relative smorgasbord of diary tasks I can do, 11 to be precise. Lastly, I can do 2 quests, the Blood Pact quest, which is potentially huge for this account, and the Restless Ghost quest, which is, well, not that useful, but it is cool and nostalgic. As always, I have a few random miscellaneous tasks that don't fit well into this graphic, but I'll mention them as they come up. We didn't roll either of the 2 chunks that have what I would consider to be a valid method of getting feathers, so the fish eggs will stay backlogged for now. And I guess let's roll the intro. All right, this is going to be the first time I'm stepping into my new chunk since rolling it. It's been like 3 or 4 days since I rolled it. I've just been so focused on getting the video together and edited that I've just been burning time on this guy, chopping logs. But it's time to move forward. I wish there was an OSRS RuneLite equivalent for RS3 and I could officially unlock it, but there's not, so I'm just going to step into it. Not even a new music track. I'll show in post-production exactly what the borders of my chunk look like, but I'll also take you to the key locations. Firstly, we have the catacombs. There's a quest called the Blood Pact quest to get in, but once we do, it's going to be huge for the account because it has multiple best in slot unlocks and, I hope, significantly better combat training than handguards. Next up, we have this minigame, the Nexus. Don't worry if you've never heard of it, it doesn't get much play. Now, it doesn't show up on the chunk picker, but this minigame can actually be completed, so I will complete it as a chunk goal. I'll talk more about the Nexus later. Next up, we have the Lumbridge Shack. You might think I'm scraping the barrel for content here, but this is the entrance to Zanaris, one day, as well as an easy clue step location. It's an emote clue step which requires a bronze dagger, gold ring, and iron full helm. Unfortunately, I cannot get an iron full helm in this chunk, but it is potentially gettable in nearby chunks, which would be cool. We have Father Ernie's house down in the south of the swamp for the Restless Ghost quest, and more importantly, over here we have the Lumbridge swamp mine. It has tin and copper along with clay. I'll be mining tin and copper to level 40 mining so that I can use the adamant pickaxe sold in Bob's Axe Shop, which I guess also sells pickaxes in RS3. There's also a net spot here. Does it give anchovies or just more crayfish? Oh, it gives anchovies. So maybe some anchovy pieces at some point in my future. Oh, and it gives shrimps. And that was a chunk task. Chunk task done. I think the first real thing I'm going to do is the Blood Pact quest, because it unlocks the catacombs, which will be my first major grind. So I'm actually a little bit apprehensive about the quest. It's a beginner quest, but I think the combat scales to your level, because it was released at the time when Jagex, in their infinite wisdom, thought this was a good idea. And that would be fine, but my levels are a little bit messed up. I have 80 defense, and I'm not wearing any armor, so I'm probably quite weak for my combat level. Anyway, we'll see. The main idea is that 3 Zamarakian cultists have kidnapped someone, and they're planning to sacrifice them in the catacombs to resurrect a dead necromancer. And this quest came out back when necromancy was bad, unlike now when necromancy is good, so we just stop them. Look at this guy. You can tell he's evil because he's bald. Oh my god, his face! This quest came out in 2013. Kale looks like he hasn't had a night's sleep since then. So, the idea of this quest is to teach you the combat triangle, where Xenia will patiently teach me to use melee against a ranger. Xenia, I'm going to break it to you. If possible, I'm using melee against everyone in this place. It's all I know. Ooh, Xenia took an arrow to the knee. Alright, moment of truth. Is he going to absolutely fucking wreck me? No. Oh my god. Are you going to kill me? Oh, Kale. Your face. I can't take it seriously. No, just give me your stuff and get out of here. I'm not going to kill you because I'm not an edgy 13-year-old. I guess this quest doesn't use combat scaling then? That must be a different one. I'm feeling pretty dumb. Oh, I'm a bit apprehensive about this quest. The guy then gets one-tapped, like instantly one-tapped. Oh, and I am absolutely destroying Caitlyn the Major. Yeah, there is definitely no combat scaling going on here. Ilona, I've come to rescue you. No one can defeat my 80 defense. I've killed 50,000 handguards preparing for this moment. This last guy, Reese, he actually kills himself if you try and spare him, which is great because someone needs to die to create the monsters here after the quest. So thank you for your sacrifice, Reese. And quest done. I get a set of magic, melee, and ranged weapons. The magic staff is actually a slightly better air staff, so that's cool, it's a best in slot. The rest are probably useless, but the main benefit is the Lumbridge Catacomb itself. The Catacombs are a tiny dungeon with monsters from level 1 to 21, plus a level 26 Necromancer called Dragath Nern as a mini-boss at the end. These guys are a lower level than handguards, but they have way more HP, and XP scales of HP in RS3, making these guys much better XP per kill than handguards despite being a lower level. I'm willing to bet they'll be better XP per hour too. The drop tables of these monsters are all basically the same, so I'll just go over them collectively. The main thing to note is they drop full leather armor, along with leather, which is a best in slot for ranged. They drop 3 necklace upgrades that are all some flavour of best in slot. The warped bats specifically drop Batwing, which I can craft into my best in slot magic gear at tier 30. And they drop mask parts, which can be used to create the mask of Dragath Nern. This isn't a best in slot. It's actually got the exact same stats as the Spiny Helm, but it is a collection log slot, and it's an achievement for the Master Quest Cape, so I feel I should probably do it. There's also these statuettes you can loot and turn in for a one-off GP reward, and doing so is also a Master Quest Cape achievement, so I'll do that too. Time to finish off Dragath Nern for the last masterpiece, who instantly respawns. That's hilarious. And I can assemble the mask fragments and put them on. Oh my god, what is that mask? Anyway, this is chunk task done. Oh, first official next slot upgrade is the holy symbol, gives me +8 to my prayer. You might notice a couple of things. Firstly, I'm getting 62k XP per hour, which is literally twice what I was getting at handguards. Second, I'm trading strength XP. This is because these guys have a lot more HP than handguards, so strength and DPS matter a bit more. And thirdly, I'm killing the warp bats, which aren't necessarily the optimal target for me. In fact, they're definitely not. But it's because they drop this Batwing, and I need to make that into my best in slot magic armor. Plus, it's just good crafting XP as well. Okay, and this Batwing shield is the last piece of magic gear I need for full Batwing, So chunk task done. And with this piece of leather gear, that's my best in slot range gear as well. Another chunk task done. Future Smash here. I forgot to actually record me wearing these at the time, so here's me doing a little fashion show for you after the fact. First, let's look at the Batwing armor. Beautiful. Now, let's look at the full range setup. Also, very sexy. First level of the grind, and it's a prayer level, 61 prayer. Did you know bat bones give fractionally more XP than regular bones? Well, they do, and now you know. Oh, Amulet of Magic. That's like a few seconds later. This is my best in slot magic gear, and it's a great time to say that I'm moving on from Warp Bats, because the last drop I need from the Catacomb monster is the Amulet of Defense, which actually does not drop from these guys. Interestingly, I got my first strange crafting rock from making Batwing armor, which seems weird, right? Like, I've got 1,000 gems? Maybe gems don't give strange rocks? I guess they can't do. Here is 66 strength over at Goblins, those are skeletal goblins, and 67 strength, which unlocks Decimate, which is actually a pretty good basic ability, I think. Oh, there it is. The Amulet of Defense. I had to kill like almost 1,000 of these guys for this. This is my best amulet for anything that is not magic. I actually kind of like how it looks. No, wait, hold on. What is my character wearing? Sometimes I have this epiphany of how absolutely ridiculous my Chunkman looks. Like the weird gimp mask with the elegant shirt and the druid legs. Oh, it's so ridiculous. I do like the amulet though. This is the last item I needed in the catacombs, so that is a chunk task done. If you're wondering, I did this grind first because it drops a decent number of tin and copper stone spirits, and my next grind will be mining a bunch of tin and copper, so it made sense to me at the time. The XP I was getting per hour was about 65k XP per hour if I was focused, so it did work out at about twice the XP of ham guards. The only downside is there are no clues rolls here, which is a shame, but honestly, if I roll the defense chunk next, then it'll take me like 200 hours instead of 400 hours, and that's huge. 200 hours is still a huge grind, but it's less scary than 400 hours, so it's great that I rolled this chunk first. Future Smash coming in here. Let's just do a quick recap of the main gear increases I got so far. The Amulet of Defense gives +8 to all my stats, which for melee represents a DPS increase of about 1.5%, which is cool. At my level, that's the equivalent of getting about 3 strength levels. Now for magic, I got Caitlyn's Staff as a quest reward, which is basically a tier 6 air staff instead of a tier 5, and this is the most marginal upgrade, but it still represents a DPS boost of 5%, plus a small accuracy boost in some cases, and the magic amulet gives me +16 to my magic strength, which in total is a combined 14% DPS increase, the equivalent of getting about 11 magic levels at this time. Next chunk task coming up, 40 mining. Here's the mine. It is a little sad, just clay, copper, tin, that's it. And as a junk task, mine some copper. But I will just mine half an inventory of tin and copper and then go make myself an ore box, which will help the grind massively. This is the first level of the grind, level 2 mining, plenty of these to come, and I've almost got a full inventory of tin and copper already. Alright, I do now have my full inventory of tin and copper, so I will deposit this into the metal bank and turn it all into bars. Wow, you get 1 XP per bar in RS3. Really? That's appalling. That's so bad. Now I can smith at the anvil. The first thing I want to do is make an ore box. That's the most important thing. Oh, I've got to heat it. I've forgotten how to actually smelt stuff. It's been a while. And the ore box is the most important thing by far, because then I can stay much longer at the mine without banking. Because it's a metal equivalent of a wood box, right? So it stores like 100 copper and tin ores. What else can I make here? Can I make everything? Wow, I can make full bronze armor at level 1. I guess I can't make dart tips yet. Everything else you can make at level 1. I've forgotten they made that change, so look, I'll start smithing some bronze gear for myself and check back in. Alright, that's level 3 smithing, and I'm out of bronze bars, so back to the mine. I guess as you get levels, you just unlock slight speed boost to the smelting and like some efficiency gains, but you don't unlock any more gear. Yeah, let's get back. Alright, I've got my first ore box full of ores, along with my first sedimentary geodes. I'll have a whole bunch of them by the end of the chunk. I don't think they give anything useful, but I don't know, maybe they do, so I'll open them all at the end. I'm level 14 mining now, but all this does is make me mine slightly faster, because I can't move on to any new rocks. I did unlock an iron pickaxe level 10 though, so that will also make the XP a little bit faster. Okay, so I've smithed a bunch of stuff here, and I feel like this is basically all the useful bronze stuff I can make. So I have my best in-slot bronze gear here, it looks like this. I got my bronze maces, they are surprisingly the best in slot because they have a prayer bonus and no other weapons do. I have a bit of fashionscape if I want to swap out the full helm to a med helm, or the chain body with the plate body. I've also got the chain skirt and the plate legs. Lastly, this bronze two-handed sword, I guess this is actually a best in slot because it's my best in slot two-handed melee weapon. And I think this is everything I need to make, right? So for the rest of the grind I can just make whatever I want. I'm tied between bronze plate bodies, which are the fastest XP, versus bronze arrowheads, which I can then make into bronze arrows later for fletching XP. I'm not sure whether the arrowheads are really worth it, beyond just fletching the willow logs into shield bows though, if I want fletching XP, so I have to think about it. Either way, all the best in slot gear I can make from smelting bronze is now done, so that is a chunk task done. Before I head back to do more mining though, let's buy an adamant pickaxe, and can I add it to my tool belt? No. No, so I guess it just doesn't work like the hatchet does on the tool belt. I guess I have to buy each and every tier pickaxe and just use each one as I get the level. It's a bit annoying, but it's not a big deal. And here it finally is, level 40 mining. Actually did not take that long. I was getting decent XP, like 20k XP per hour. Let's take a look at what we've unlocked here. A lot of quest stuff, a lot of stuff to make mining more efficient, a bunch of new ores. There's coal and iron pretty close to me. I think just one chunk to the west. And I'm not actually sure the Alcrid mine has it, maybe that has coal and iron as well. Now, let's attach the adamant axe to my tool belt. It replaces the mythical axe on my tool belt, which is interesting, and then let's mine an ore with it. And boom! Chunk task done. Let's get to smithing. That is level 8 smithing, but more importantly, it's 1,000 total levels. Isn't that pretty cool on a chunk account? Alright, I have level 20 smithing, and as you can see, it is not possible to make dart tips at level 20 smithing, so I guess you do need the quest. I don't know what's on Chunk Picker, it might be a fault of my settings, but it does mean that at least all my smithing goals are technically done. Okay, I spent a bit more time smithing. I got as far as level 25 smithing. I decided on bronze arrows. Still not sure if that's the right choice, but then I was like, why am I doing this? I don't need to smith the bars right now, and maybe I'll find a use of them later, like in summoning or something, or when I smith themselves into something specific for invention components. I don't know. The point is, I don't need to smith them right now, so why bother? I should just move on with the other chunk tasks and decide what to do with these bars later. I think it's time for the Restless Ghost. A beautiful, nostalgic little quest from back in the day, and the next step was to speak to Father Ernie, who's down at the bottom of the chunk, and I couldn't get to him before. He gives me the Ghost Speak amulet. Thanks, mate. After some light trolling, the ghost tells me where to find his missing head. I take his head back from this undead warlock. I return the skull. I get to witness the absolute peak of RuneScape 3 cutscenes. And I complete the quest, for about 1,000 prayer XP total, which is not that much at this point in the game, but I will never say no to free prayer XP. Chunk task done. Right, so I'm just plowing through these chunk tasks. Up next, I will try to cover every single diary task in 30 seconds. Look through Father Eric's selection of gravestones. Buy the most expensive for 5k GP. Kill a rat in Malumbrous Swamp. Cut a tree in Malumbrous Swamp. Light a log in Malumbrous Swamp. Cook the rat meat on the fire in Malumbrous Swamp. Enter the abandoned shack in Malumbrous Swamp. Get a new Ghost Speak amulet from Father Ernie in, guess where, the Lumbrous Swamp. Talk to Ysondria at the Nexus, also, surprisingly, in Malumbrous Swamp. Cast a Lumbrous teleport spell using runes. And that's it. The whole thing. Every single diary task I can do is done. Chunk task done. Alright, I think it's time to talk about the Nexus, an overworld prayer-based minigame from 2013 that I've now been playing for almost 2 hours. The concept behind it is that a monster, called the Grotesque, is growing beneath and causing the corruption in the Lumbrous Swamp, represented by these grasping hands in the central crater. Ysondria, an apprentice druid, explains how the Grotesque can be banished to a display of faith, by taking corruption from the central crater and taking it to these pillars, like you can see in these clips. The minigame is much simpler than it originally appears. Despite there being 4 pillars and each pillar having 4 bowls, none of this really matters. You just fill up your corruption sack, take it to any of the pillars, empty it into any of the bowls, and get prayer XP. After eventually gaining exactly 37,224 XP, enough to go from level 1 to 40 prayer, the Grotesque is banished and you're done. You can't play the minigame anymore. For this reason, I feel like getting all this XP is an appropriate chunk task to get before moving on. And the XP is actually pretty good. I'm getting around 10k prayer XP per hour, basically fully AFK. And if you're prepared to tick manipulate a little bit when emptying out the corruption, you can get even faster XP, but it's obviously less AFK. Now, originally, this game was intended to be a multiplayer experience, and there was an additional mechanic. If all 4 pillars were in use at the same time, the Grotesque could be summoned in the centre of the arena, where it could then be banished again for a bigger chunk of XP. Sadly, no one plays the Nexus anymore, so this mechanic is effectively dead. It's a shame actually, because I feel like this minigame was probably some developer's labour of love. Unlike Vinesweeper, which I was a bit mean about last episode, and feels like it was knocked out by an intern working weekends on minimum wage, the Nexus feels like somebody really tried to make it work. It's got a surprisingly deep amount of lore and some cool looking art assets. I feel like it's this ambitious failure which has to be understood in the context of when it was made. Back in 2013, Jagex was experimenting with ways of making players interact more, especially outside the wilderness, ways of injecting player agency through choices, and ways of having that choice create permanent changes in the RuneScape lore, especially when related to the RuneScape gods. The Nexus is a great example of this approach, as well as a great example of why this entire experiment ended up not really working. The 4 bowls in each pillar, which are used to cleanse the corruption, each represent one of the main gods from that time: Chaos for Zamorak, Order for Saradomin, Fealty for Armadyl, and War for Bandos. You can deposit the corruption in whichever bowl represents the god you want to support. That's cool, right? It's a nice touch. But here's the problem. The bowl you pick doesn't matter. No matter what you do, you get the same XP, the Grotesque is banished in the same way. The bowl doesn't matter. It's like the perfect metaphor for this entire period of RuneScape's lore, really. Choice without consequence, promise without payout. I say this with a lot of love, the whole God Wars 2 era which this content belongs to, which had some really incredible moments to it, but at the same time, it really did write a lot of checks it couldn't cash. Anyway, that's level 62 prayer, and I'll see you in the next clip when this is done.
I lied. Next clip is me getting level 92 woodcutting. Never trust a stranger on the internet, kids. Now I've started putting the video together, which means it's woodcutting time. I felt I had to show this level though, it's halfway to 99, which is a crazy milestone considering I get like 25k XP per hour. Now, this is it. She won't let me siphon any more corruption. The Grotesque is banished. The Nexus is done. A truly joyous day. Well, thank you Ysondria, if that's how you're supposed to say it. And sorry if my voice is a bit messed up, I've got a bit of a cold at the moment. Well, I think that's it, right? Chunk done? I have some minor housekeeping to do before rolling. I got 310 extra feathers whilst grinding out the gear upgrades in the catacombs, And I want to use those first, just in case I get one of the fish eggs I backlogged. The catacomb monsters are a slightly better source of feathers than ham guards, but it turns out still pretty bad. So I'm not going to consciously grind the eggs out yet, but if I get one organically, then that's pretty cool, right? It's not an egg, but it is level 64 fishing. Alright, I used all 310 feathers and no dice, so it's time for another chunk roll. No, it's not! I'd forgotten that I'd promised to open my sedimentary geodes. Alright, I opened all like 300 sedimentary geodes, and what happened is exactly what I thought would happen. I got a diamond. In fact, I got 5 diamonds, so that does mean, unfortunately, I have one more chunk task to do, cut a diamond, which requires 43 crafting. Good news is I'm 41 crafting already and have a decent amount of banked crafting XP, so that should not take too long. That's level 42 crafting from cutting gems in my bank, and I might have enough stuff for 43, we'll see. I did not. I was a little off, which is why I'm now down in the catacombs killing warped bats for batwing leather. And I think this should be exactly enough. It was, to the piece of leather. Nice, so I'm now 43 crafting, I can cut the diamond and finish the chunk. I also got 10 more feathers, which I will use on the vanishingly small chance I get a fish egg. Here's the diamond, let's cut it, and the surprise chunk task is done. Okay, so I will roll the new chunk this episode, and I will show it, no shenanigans like last time, I promise. But let's do a quick recap of the progress made so far. I'm really sorry again that my voice is still not great. I'm still recovering from my cold, and I put this off as long as I could, but I really wanted to get this video done now, because, well, I'm about to get married in a few days, and then go on a honeymoon, so if I don't do it now, it'll have to wait like 2 weeks. Because look, I care about this series, but not so much that I play RuneScape on my honeymoon. At least, not officially. I mean, if a little bit of progress just happened to get made on mobile whilst I'm waiting at the airport, then, well, I won't tell my fiancé if you don't. It can be our little secret. Anyway, that's enough about that. I'm going to quickly do the video recap before I do anything else weird. This was a much shorter chunk, but we did get some levels. First, 65 to 67 strength from the catacomb grind. 60 to 62 prayer, mostly from the Nexus. 1 to 40 mining for the adamant pickaxe. 41 to 43 crafting so I could cut a diamond. And 1 to 27 smithing before I realised it was kind of pointless to trade it yet. Also 91 to 92 woodcutting because I spent a lot of time AFKing at Willows while editing this video. I also got the following levels, mostly from daily tasks. 2 herblore levels, 1 fletching level, 1 slayer level, 1 cooking level, and 1 fishing level. Finally, I have 6 agility. I got this from auto-completing 2 daily tasks, and that's because now I have 2 chunks unlocked, I figured I'd finally unlock the surge ability, which lets you dash forward 8 tiles. It's useful for maneuvering in higher level PVM, but for me, it's just going to be a way of moving around my chunks a bit faster. Seriously, not having surge or bladed dive on my chunkman has been rough, but now I at least have surge. And bladed dive is potentially just a chunk away, so there's that too. For backlog tasks, it's still just the fish eggs. I've now used 5,320 feathers trying to get them without any success. Anyway, with that, it's back to the chunk picker. Okay, wow, we are back rolling another chunk, so soon after the last one as well. Let's go over what I could get next. Chunks 1, 2, and 3 are the same as before, so I won't talk about them much. Chunk 1 has the defense cape, and is still a death chunk, although a little less deathy than before now that I have a better combat training method. Chunk 1 remains my least favourite chunk because it unlocks no new content. Only a big grind of existing content until I get 99 defense. The Constitution cape in Chunk 3 is still going to be a passive task if I roll it because training Constitution is so slow, 3 times slower than any other combat XP, and I've decided it's a meme grind. We also have Chunks 4 and 5, which are new. Chunk 4 is the southern half of Alcarid. Now, Alcarid has a ton of stuff. It has a bunch of shops, quests, interesting NPCs, but in terms of chunk tasks, there's just one big one, which is level 69, nice, thieving to steal from the Caridian desert safes, and I only have 64 thieving, so that would take a bit of time. Then, Chunk 5. Well, Chunk 5 is a doozy. I both love and am super afraid of Chunk 5. It has a lot of cool stuff, but the big one for me is the Lumbridge Cave. This would take Slayer off the backlog, and then I'd be able to do every single task that Jacqueline can offer, except, I think, ghosts. So if I can get enough Slayer points to block that one task, I could potentially grind out Slayer as high as I want, which is both good, but also kind of scary. Also, it would unlock a major Herblore grind. I've avoided Herblore grind so far because I only count complete, usable potions as chunk tasks, and the only complete potion I can make with my current chunks is a magic potion at level 5 Herblore. But I can get a wider variety of secondary ingredients in the Lumbridge Slayer Cave, and this unlocks extreme defense potions at level 90 Herblore. I haven't fully looked into this, but my first guess is that this would be an insanely big grind, like absolutely massive, gargantuan. But we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. It also has the Shattered Worlds minigame, which in any other chunk would be the main event, but here doesn't get much of a look in. Also, I know everyone's going to stop watching as soon as I roll the next chunk, so I'll save this now. The next episode might be a bit delayed because of that whole wedding and honeymoon thing I mentioned earlier. But you know what would be a great wedding gift? Hitting that like and subscribe button, right? Exactly. I'm not above using emotional blackmail to get a new subscriber or two. Anyway, let's roll the chunk. Oh, it's chunk 4, the Alcarid South chunk. Great, so it's a thieving grind. I'll wait until the next episode to actually go in and showcase the chunk, so I'll call the episode here. Expect the next episode to have at least 2 chunks in it because this first chunk really won't take that long, and see you next time.